So they say that a TED Talk is supposed to be something personal, something where I share something I learned in my life, a lesson, something that shaped me, and share with you, my audience. And I'm going to talk about something that is really, really personal to me, and something I've practically never spoken about, and especially not in such a setting with so many people. But it's something, it's from a childhood, it's a childhood experience where I experienced something that really, really shaped me. And just so you know and have an idea of what that childhood was like, I have to take you back a little bit in time. So we came to Germany about 20-something years ago, and I'm originally from Iran, Tehran, and I was born in 1980. In 1980 is just shortly after the Islamic Revolution. And that Islamic Revolution was really a people's revolution. It was a revolution where everybody was on the streets. The women, the men, the kids, the grandparents, the rich people, the poor people, everybody was fighting. And everybody was fighting for freedom. And everybody was fighting against oppression. And so in that setting, they were successful. They drove out the Shah, the king, and it was the beginning of a new age. Now, when you have these shifts of power, when so many things change, when power moves from one hand to many other hands, you have chaos, you have this power shift, and there's lots of players, lots of countries, of powers that see those moments as moments of an opportunity for them to really take over a country. So it was that in 78, 79, you had this revolution, and just shortly after that, a war starts. The Iran-Iraq war. And so Iran is being attacked, and it's the beginning of a war that would last 10 years. And a war that lasts 10 years costs 1 million lives, and displaces many, many more, and basically crippled a generation and a country. So I'm going to take you back then in my first memories, and that's around 1984. I'm 4 years old, and I start, when you're 4 years old, that's the time where you start to remember things, and you start to really start to a little comprehend what is going on around you. And it was really weird, and we would be at home, and it would get dark, and instead of turning the lights on, as you would, my parents closed the curtains, turned on candles, and the whole family would amass in the living room and turn on the radio and listen to reports. In the nights, they would start with sirens. You would hear the sirens in the city. Sometimes in Hamburg they do test them, the sirens that say that an attack is coming, and a short while after that, you would hear explosions in the far. And I didn't know what was going on, but I knew something wasn't right. And I knew when the next morning we drove through the city, and in the place of buildings that just stood there yesterday, now it was just a big pile of rubble. And I knew something was wrong. So I asked my father, so I started to grasp the concept of bombs, that bombs destroy buildings, and in these buildings there are people, so the people go away, so they're gone. And I would ask my father that, so Dad, what would happen if a bomb hits our house, our home? And he was an architect, and he would say to me, son, you know what, I built this house. I built this house, and I designed it in a way that even if a bomb would hit it, nothing would happen. And I was relieved. I knew I didn't have to fear anything. Nothing could do us harm because we were safe. Our house is safe. Well, my mother knew that wasn't true. My mother knew that it was a dangerous time, dangerous situation, and she wanted us to get out of there. And I don't know much about what happened in between, but I knew that the next thing was that we'd be standing in an airport in some city in Europe. And it It was not the family, it was just my little baby brother, my mother, and me. So I was standing there in this airport and not understanding what had just happened. Where was my family? Where was my dad, my grandma, my uncle, my aunt, and all of that? And I felt, and I couldn't cry, I couldn't really grasp anything, but I felt helpless. And you know, a feeling of absolute helplessness that you can't do anything. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go back. I had no choice. And that's something that really burned into my mind, this feeling that there was really an ugly feeling. But you know, that's how war is. They don't ask you what you want, or what a kid wants, or what a family wants. Somebody decides something, and then bombs fly, and it's over. You have no choice. But something that happened was that, so I came to this country, I felt all alone. I was in a country I couldn't understand the language, I couldn't understand the kids, they were different, and the family was gone. It was a terrible experience, but I understood that it took me a couple of years to reach a point where I would comprehend something that was so important that would change my life. And that was that I saw that I couldn't change the circumstances. I saw that, and I understood that at some point, consciously or unconsciously. But I understood something else too, that I could decide to accept these circumstances. That my choice was to either be just sad and not do anything, or accept the war, everything that happened, and just live, and just be happy. And I did. And once I did that, I started to draw kids' drawings again. So my mother, who was being called to the principal office every week because I would just be drawing tanks and bombs and submarines, I would start to draw kids' drawings. I would start to play with other kids. I would play alone and had fun, and everything changed. And it took me maybe 15, 20 years to understand that these two things, that absolute helplessness, and that moment when I understood that choice takes me out of the darkness, was something that really shaped every other decision I made. That really shaped everything I am today. And it is this concept of having a choice. This is what drives me. This is where my ideas come from. This is where my passion and all I do and push come from. And today, so you know, once you understand the concept that you have a choice, you can apply it to anything else. So if you're in school, and me and my friends, we did stupid stuff a lot of times, but the really big, dumb things, something clicked and said, okay, you don't have to do this. You have a choice. You don't have to do this. So I didn't, which was a very good thing. And when my parents told me that you have to become this and that and study that and be that way, again, something clicked, and I knew I had a choice, that this wasn't what I have to do. Or in studies, and you know, you study 3 years, and suddenly you know, this is not me, this is not what I want to do. And even though you might just have wasted 3 years of your life, you still have a choice. So, as I said, this concept of having a choice is really what drives me. And it has driven me up to today, where I created a company that, as you might guess, it's about giving people a choice. And I'm from the IT field, so I can work in the IT field and create things. And I saw, you know, the internet and how powerful this was, and how it changed the world, how it gave us new ways to communicate, new ways to interact, new ways to share our feelings, to share things, and really access to all that knowledge that is in the world. And that became really something that's really important to me, just like the guy from Premium Cola just talked about how that thing really changes the world. And I knew that such an important thing, it needs to be in a way that nobody can take it away from you. And so I thought, what if? You know, because right now, the internet is controlled by a huge series of huge companies and corporations and governments and stuff like that. And just as with a war that happens, somebody decides something and all of it goes away. There are countries where cut it off. There are countries that control it and all those kind of things. And I wanted to be sure that nobody could take it away from me or from us. So we built something, a box basically, a box that is this size. And it's basically a small piece of social infrastructure. So imagine it this way. We have taken the social networks and the cloud stuff, everything that powers this big internet. We put it in a small box, this size. We built it, we programmed it in a way that anybody could use it. It just has one button. And once you hit this one button, something happens. It creates a wireless network. It creates storage space. It creates a social network. So that, for example, if you're just a small company, you could take it into your company, turn it on, and it would create this wireless thing, and you could share data and collaborate with your colleagues, but also take people from outside and without having to do anything with technology, any setups thing. And we built this because in the next step, we want to create something maybe even smaller that goes into every home. And once these small pieces of infrastructure go into every home, you have these networks that overlap. And once they overlap and become something bigger, you have a separate network. But now, the difference is that this network doesn't belong to anyone. It's not something anyone can take away from you, can take away from me. It is something that is ours as a people, because we built it. We are, each one of us is just a small piece of social infrastructure, and we connect. I connect to you, you connect to her, she connects to him, without us having to know the technology behind it or any of you to understand how it works. It's like magic, but it creates something that is ours. So that is where my passion went, where all those things that really shaped me, that feeling that these things can be taken away from you. And these things can be taken away from you in just a moment. Somebody decides something, and all of that is shut down. All of those things crumble down. And I want to create something that keeps that from happening. That gives us a choice, gives me a choice, so I can have that and not have to lose everything because somebody, somewhere, some powerful person decided to do something bad or whatever. So these moments, that really shape you, force you sometimes to really create something and really push you towards that. And for me, it's just the concept of choice. I want to have that choice. Thank you.